The thing about working with wild animals, you never really know when things will go sideways. One minute, everything's fine. The next, you're staring into the eyes of something that remembers it's a predator. That's exactly what happened to one zookeeper, who went from expert handler to potential prey in a matter of seconds. This wasn't just any ordinary day at the MGM Zoo in Las Vegas. This wasn't just any ordinary day at the MGM Zoo in Las Vegas. No, this was the kind of day that reminds you nature doesn't care about fences, contracts, or human arrogance. The tourists came for a show, and oh, did they get one. But instead of a routine display of man's so-called dominance over the animal kingdom, they witnessed something much, much different. Something raw, something real. At first, it was all business as usual. The lions, massive and lazy-looking, lounged in their enclosure, basking in the artificial safari world humans built around them. The crowd watched, snapping photos, sipping overpriced sodas, maybe even joking about how chill these big cats seemed. But then, something shifted. One lion decided it had had enough. Enough of the routine. Enough of the expectations. Enough of playing nice. And just like that, the illusion shattered. In the blink of an eye, the so-called trained predator turned on its handler. And let's be clear, this wasn't some playful, oops, got a little rough moment. This was an attack. A full-force, claws-out, instinct-driven explosion of power. Right there, in front of everyone. Gasps, screams, chaos. Because suddenly, it was all too obvious. There was no real barrier between man and beast. There never had been. And that poor handler, he was in the wrong place at the worst possible time. 1 second, he was in control. The next, he was prey. The footage shows it all. One moment, he's commanding the animal. The next, he's scrambling for his life. His job, his training, his years of experience, all meaningless in the face of raw, unfiltered nature. But here's where it gets interesting. Somehow, he escaped. And not just escaped, he walked away with nothing more than a leg wound. Stitches. That's it. Now maybe that's luck. And just like that, another animal paid the ultimate price for human error. But this wasn't just any animal. This was Harambe, a western lowland gorilla, a critically endangered species, a being far older and stronger than the chaos that sealed his fate. And yet, on May 28, 2016, in a moment that would ripple across the internet and beyond, he was gone. What happened next? That depends on who you ask. The official story says Harambe dragged the boy, carried him, held onto him for 10 agonizing minutes, while horrified visitors screamed. They say he was agitated and disoriented, spooked by the sheer panic erupting around him. The zoo's dangerous animal response team didn't hesitate. They didn't take chances. A decision was made, and a shot was fired. But let's think for a second. This was a 440-pound gorilla. If he had wanted to hurt that child, would there have been anything stopping him? Would there have been a 10-minute standoff? Or was something else happening? Tranquilizers? Not an option, they said. Too slow. Could make him aggressive. But that's the thing. Was he aggressive? Or was he trying to protect the child from the chaos above? Was this a rescue attempt misinterpreted through the lens of fear? Was the response team making a split-second choice based on instinct? Or was this just the easiest way out? And then came the fallout, the blame, the debates. Should the parents have been watching their child more closely? Should the zoo's enclosure have been better secured? Should Harambe, an innocent animal, have been the one to pay the price? But Harambe didn't just fade into history. His death became something else. A movement, a symbol, an internet legend. He was mourned in memes, immortalized in tributes, plastered across social media in ways no one saw coming. His name was shouted in jest, in anger, in solidarity. Songs were written, statues were built. His face became part of the digital age's strangest, most unexpected cultural revolution. And if you thought that was the only time a lion reminded people who's really in charge, think again. Because not long after that, something else happened. Something that should have been a harmless little experience for some lucky tourists. But instead, it turned into yet another moment of realization. These animals are not here to play nice. It started simple enough. The lions were loose. Well, as loose as they could be under zookeeper supervision, strolling around, playing with their handlers, putting on what looked like a controlled, safe display. A spectacle for the tourists who had probably spent a ridiculous amount of money just for the privilege of being this close to one of nature's most perfect killing machines. But then, one of them got too close. And the lion? It didn't like him. At all. Maybe it was the way he moved. Maybe it was a smell. Maybe it was just bad luck. But whatever it was, the lion's body language shifted. You could see it. Something in its eyes. Something in the way it locked onto him. And in that split second, every single person watching knew. This was no longer a fun, controlled moment. This was a problem. And the tourist? Oh, he almost learned that the hard way. The lion nearly grabbed him, nearly turned an exciting story into a nightmare. But he backed off just in time. Just barely. Would he have been fast enough on his own? Or did he survive because the zookeeper was there, just quick enough, just alert enough to yank the lion's head away before it escalated? And that was it. Here comes another disaster. This time, a tiger. A full-grown, untamed force of nature. One that never should have been caged in the first place. Decided it had had enough. It happened during a circus performance. A packed crowd. Families. Children. A scene that was supposed to be lighthearted, entertaining, fun. And then, without warning, the tiger broke free. No barriers. No control. Just raw, primal instinct surging through an animal that was never meant to be paraded around for human amusement. It didn't take long for chaos to unfold. The crowd? Helpless. A wave of panic. Screams tearing through the air as the beast bolted straight into the mass of people. And before anyone could react, it struck. 2 children. A few bites, they say. Minor injuries, according to the official reports. But let's think about that for a second. A tiger, a real, living, muscle-packed predator, sunk its teeth into 2 human beings, and we're just calling it scratches? Does that sound right to you? The kids were rushed to the hospital, treated, and then discharged. Just like that, the story was neatly wrapped up. Nothing to see here? Move along. But let's ask the real question. How did this even happen? This wasn't some back alley illegal setup. This was a circus act organized as part of a major local festival in Linfen, Shaanxi province. A village gathering, an event that should have been about celebration. Instead, it turned into a moment of sheer, unfiltered fear. And if that wasn't bad enough, this wasn't even the first tiger-related disaster that week. Just days earlier, an elderly man in Sichuan nearly lost his hand trying to feed another circus tiger. The footage? Absolutely sickening. A man reaching in, trusting the bars to protect him, only for the tiger to latch onto his flesh and refuse to let go. People scrambled. Onlookers grabbed long wooden poles and started beating the animal, desperate to break its grip. The man, he collapsed, his hand a bloody mess. Reports said his wrist and elbow were shredded, but again, the story was kept quiet. A quick hospital trip, emergency treatment, and suddenly, no more headlines. The circus company admitted the cage hadn't been secured. That's right. The one thing keeping a massive, lethal predator from tearing into a crowd of people? Left unsecured. And just when you thought it was only the big predators reminding us who's really in charge, here comes a different kind of nightmare. No claws, no fangs, just pure intelligence, weaponized. This wasn't some giant muscle-bound beast. No, this was a Colombian white-faced capuchin, a monkey. Small, unassuming, the kind of animal people usually think of as cute, maybe even funny. But this one, it had plans. It didn't scream, it didn't lash out, it didn't need to, because while everyone else was staring at it like just another exhibit, this monkey was thinking, watching, testing, and then it made its move. A rock, a sharp one. Not just some random pebble it happened to find. No, this was a deliberate choice. Something it knew could do damage. And then, with both hands gripping it tight, it started smashing. Again, and again, and again. At first, people laughed. Oh, look at the monkey playing with a rock. Cute, right? But then, crack. Laughter stopped. Another hit. Crack. Gasps. And then, in an instant, the entire glass pane split. Not a little scratch, not some tiny dent. This thing was breaking apart. And the monkey, it knew. Because here's the part that should make you pause. The second the glass fractured, this little primate jumped back. Like it wasn't expecting it to work that well. Like it had just realized the full extent of what it had done. But then it crept back. Slowly, staring at the damage, touching it, examining it. Almost like it was satisfied. And zoo officials say this wasn't just any monkey. This was the smart one. The others struggle to even crack open walnuts. But this one, it figured out how to use tools. Not by watching humans, not by being trained, just by putting the pieces together on its own. The first time it used a rock, it was to break food open. The first time it turned that skill toward glass, well, you just heard what happened. The zoo scrambled to remove every rock, every throwable object, anything that could be used for another escape attempt. And the glass? Reinforced, they claimed. Strong enough to hold. But you have to wonder, if this monkey figured it out once, what's stopping it from figuring it out again? And let's be real here. If one little capuchin monkey can analyze its surroundings, identify weak points, improvise tools, and attempt a jailbreak, what else are animals thinking while we stare at them from behind the glass? And if you still think those glass enclosures are just harmless barriers keeping everything nice and safe, let's talk about what went down at Chiba Zoological Park in Japan. Because this was not just another day at the zoo. It was the Chiba Zoological Park in Japan. A toddler, 2 years old, barely old enough to understand what a lion is, stands near the glass barrier of the enclosure, just watching, oblivious. Then he turns his back. The lion had been watching him, waiting, and the second the kid looked away, it launched. Not a slow, cautious movement, not a test, no hesitation, just pure predatory drive. A Sasnyolk van kilogram apex predator slamming full force into the glass, aiming straight for a child that never even saw it coming. The impact was so powerful the glass shook. The force alone sent the kid stumbling forward, startled. The lion? It didn't stop. It pawed at the glass, pacing, staring, as if it was trying to figure out why the hunt had failed. Now, of course, the official explanation came fast. The zoo claimed it was just playing, that this was normal behavior, nothing to worry about, just a big cat being playful, right? But let's break that down for a second. Since when do lions play like that? Stalking prey, timing their movements, striking at the exact moment of vulnerability? That's not a game. That's instinct honed by millions of years of evolution. And that's exactly why animal experts weren't buying the playful excuse. Adam Roberts from Born Free USA put it bluntly, this was the reaction of a predator recognizing prey. The only reason this didn't turn into an absolute disaster? A sheet of reinforced glass. But let's be real, that's a barrier, a man-made one, and barriers fail. PETA took it even further. They pointed to this as yet another example of what happens when you take a wild, powerful animal and shove it into captivity. Frustration, boredom, and moments like this, where all of that pent-up instinct comes roaring back. So sure, the zoo said everything was fine. The child was unharmed, the glass held. But if that moment taught us anything, it's this. The only thing separating us from the predators we think we've tamed is a thin, breakable line. And if you think lions are the only ones reminding us that glass walls and steel bars don't change the laws of nature, let's talk about what happened in Nebraska. 2 silverback gorillas, hundreds of pounds of muscle, raw power, and an instinct to dominate. Caged, but never tamed. It happened at Omaha's Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium. A normal day. Visitors strolling through, kids pointing, parents chatting. Then tension. One gorilla stepped a little too close, crossed an invisible line, a challenge. And in an instant, the calm shattered. The second silverback didn't hesitate. It charged. A collision like a freight train. The ground shook. Visitors gasped as the 2 giants went at it, pushing, shoving, swiping with a kind of force that could tear through bone like paper. 15 seconds. That's how long it lasted, but it felt longer. People scrambled back. A voice rang out, "No, no, no!" Another, "Where are the zookeepers?" Panic, because everyone watching knew one thing. When animals like this really decide to fight, there's no stopping it. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it ended. One backed off. Tension still thick in the air. But the message was clear. This wasn't some mindless scuffle. This was hierarchy. This was a battle for control. So, what do the experts say? That it's normal behavior. That gorillas do this in the wild all the time. Sure, but here's the thing. This isn't the wild. These fights happen in sprawling jungles where a loser can run, where they aren't forced to live in tight spaces, staring at each other every day with nowhere to go. So, yeah, maybe this was normal. But how long before one of these normal fights doesn't stop at 15 seconds? How long before those steel barriers aren't enough? And just when you think people might have learned to respect the raw power of wild animals, along comes someone who takes stupidity to a whole new level. Toronto Zoo, April 2016. Crowd strolling, families enjoying the day. And then, chaos. A woman who, let's be clear, had all the barriers in place to keep her safe, decided those rules weren't for her. Why? Because she dropped her hat. A hat. And instead of asking for help like any rational person, she took it upon herself to jump the fence and go into the tiger enclosure. People froze, because they knew. This wasn't a fluffy house cat she was walking toward. This was a tiger, a top-tier predator, built for nothing but speed, strength, and precision. And guess what? The tiger noticed. It lunged. The only thing separating her from instant bloody disaster was one more fence. That was it. One extra barrier between her and becoming another statistic in the long list of people who thought wild animals were cute until it was too late. Somehow, she made it back out unharmed. But that wasn't the end of it, because the crowd had seen what she did. They had felt the tension, the inches between her and an obituary, and they weren't about to let her just walk away like nothing happened. One man lost it. Called her a moron right to her face. Because what kind of example was she setting for kids watching? That rules don't matter? That wild animals are just there for human entertainment? An argument broke out. People wanted her to understand how reckless she had been. But did she? Or did she just shrug it off like she had done nothing wrong? The zoo was furious. Jennifer Tracy, a spokesperson for the Toronto Zoo, didn't hold back. She called it irresponsible, flat out. Not just because the woman had risked her own life, but because if that tiger had gotten to her, it might have been killed because of her mistake. And that's the real issue, isn't it? These animals don't ask to be locked up. They don't get a choice in being stared at by crowds every day. And yet, the second something goes wrong, it's their lives on the line. So, was it just a dumb decision? Or was it another reminder that people still think they can bend the laws of nature without consequence? And if you thought reckless humans were the only ones causing chaos at zoos, think again. Because sometimes it's the animals that decide they've had enough. And when that happens, it's a whole different kind of disaster. This time, it wasn't a tiger. It wasn't a gorilla. It was something worse. A hippo. Now, let's get one thing straight. Hippos kill more people in Africa than lions, crocodiles, or any other large animal. They're territorial, they're unpredictable, and they can snap a human in half without even trying. But somehow, in this zoo, one of these multi-ton beasts just wandered out of its enclosure like it was taking a casual stroll. People freaked out. What else were they supposed to do? This wasn't some slow-moving cow meandering around the petting zoo. This was a creature that could crush bones with a single chomp. And then, out of nowhere, a security guard stepped up. Did he run? Number, did he call for backup? Not yet. Did he have a tranquilizer gun, a barricade, any kind of serious defense? Nope. He had his hand. Yes, this man, who clearly had no interest in self-preservation, decided the best way to handle an escaped hippopotamus was to slap it. You read that right. He slapped it. Lightly at first, like he was dealing with an unruly toddler instead of one of the deadliest animals on the planet. And what did the hippo do? It turned slowly, fixing him with that dead-eyed, prehistoric stare. And then it opened its mouth. Not just a little. Wide. That gaping maw, those insane teeth, this was a warning, a flex, a message that should have been crystal clear. Try that again and see what happens. But did the guard back down? Did he run? Did he show even the slightest bit of fear? Nope. He slapped it again. And somehow, against all logic, against every survival instinct in the book, it worked. The hippo, after a long, tense moment, turned around and lumbered back toward the water. The crisis was over. But was it? Because the real question is, how did it even get out in the first place? And if a single security guard was all that stood between the public and a rampaging hippo, what does that say about zoo safety? Something to think about. Because next time, it might not turn around so easily. And just when you thought you'd seen it all, escaped lions, hippos breaking loose, tigers attacking children, along comes something smarter. A mandrill, not just any monkey. A mandrill, the largest, most powerful of the old world monkeys. A creature built like a tank, but fast as a whip. Razor-sharp canines that rival a lion's, muscles packed into a deceptively compact frame, and most importantly, brains. Serious brains. This wasn't some clumsy, desperate attempt at escape. This was a prison break. Augsburg Zoo, 2011. Just another routine day. Families strolling, kids pressing their sticky fingers against the glass, tourists half-heartedly snapping pictures while sipping overpriced coffee. Zookeepers going about their usual rounds, confident that the enclosures were secure, that the animals were contained, that nothing out of the ordinary could happen. And then, chaos. In the blink of an eye, the order of things shattered. The mandrill, who, let's be honest, had probably been planning this for a while, made its move. It didn't hesitate. It didn't stumble. It climbed. It jumped. It outsmarted the barriers designed to keep it locked away. 1 second, it was just another animal behind glass and steel. The next, it was free. And not just free, in control. Because this wasn't a frantic escape. This wasn't an animal panicking and flailing, unsure of where to go. Some slowly backed away, whispering frantically to each other. Others stood there, stunned, torn between fear and fascination. And then there were the ones who fumbled for their phones, torn between filming and fleeing. Because let's be clear, this isn't a squirrel loose in a supermarket. This is a creature that, if it wanted to, could tear through flesh like paper. And where were the zookeepers? Not there. Not at first. In those long, tension-filled moments, one thing became painfully clear. This creature was in charge now. When the staff finally showed up, the situation was delicately handled. Or, in other words, they scrambled like their lives depended on it. The Mandrill was eventually recaptured, the immediate threat neutralized. And then, the zoo went into full-blown damage control. Nothing to worry about, they insisted. The Mandrill wasn't aggressive, it was just curious. It posed no real danger. But let's be real, the only reason this didn't turn into a full-blown disaster? Because the Mandrill decided not to make it one. And that is what should make people uneasy. Because if this animal could outthink its enclosure once, if it could outmaneuver the very systems designed to keep it contained, what's stopping it from doing it again? Do you think these zookeepers will ever learn their lessons? When will humans stop meddling with wildlife?